So basically, what I'm going to do here is just record this video and not do it live because Facebook is a bunch of fucking cocksuckers. And for some reason, I think all of a sudden, because I don't know, maybe I'm just being paranoid, maybe I'm just being too biased here. I don't know, but I keep mentioning, I reference something, and all of a sudden the video stops, and it won't. Basically, it won't save to my Facebook. It won't. So I can't really do much of a live video here. But anyway, I'm talking about my persistent problem with people believing that my screen name, which is Tad Nugent, which is not my real name, but I'm not. Anybody who knows me knows my real name, But anyway, people think that the name Tad Nugent is somehow a reference to Ted Nugent. Besides, I really don't know why. I guess they see the similarity in the names Tad and Ted, and they automatically assume I'm Ted Nugent, or I'm doing something with Ted Nugent, or some kind of affiliation with Ted Nugent, especially on a political front. And it's kind of stupid, which I'm thinking about changing my screen name anyway. But anyway, a lot of people attack me and start talking about, or they start mentioning Ted Nugent on these pages that I post on or I comment on, and it's like I have to sit there and explain to them that it has nothing to do with Ted Nugent. The name Tad Nugent is a reference to Ted Nugent, but only in a comical context. If anybody has a brain or a TV or has watched TV in the past 15 years would know or 20 years, well, a little less than 20 years. There's a show that was really popular just over a decade ago. It aired its last episode back in 2005 or 2006. That 70s show, I guess some people haven't heard of it, but basically it's a comedy show. No, it's basically a sitcom set in the 70s about teenagers doing teenage stuff. And there's a lot of references to 70s actors and movies and bands and singers and whatever, and things people saw and experienced in the 70s. So it's set in the 70s, for Christ's sake. So basically it's supposed to be 1970 something in the show. And at one point or another, there's been quite a few people that are still around that were around in the 70s who made cameos or guest appearances in the show. And sometimes things are referenced, but the person that's referenced is never actually seen in the show. Like for example, I think it was the first episode where the singer Todd Rundgren, who's also a music, he's a very involved in the music business anyway, even just not as a singer. Not only just as a singer, but also as a producer and a songwriter. But Todd Rundgren had his popularity, phase in the, mid-late 70s. Well, early to late 70s, I should say, in various forms. But he had a couple of real big hit songs. And basically one of his biggest songs in the 70s were Hello, It's Me. And Todd Rundgren is referenced in, I want to say it's the first episode of that 70s show, or one of the first episodes. It's definitely the first season. And at one point, the characters are going to a Todd Rundgren concert, and their car breaks down, and anyway, the mechanic he says, well, since they didn't really have any, since the characters don't have money, I guess basically one of the characters has to trade their Todd Rundgren concert tickets for the battery that's needed to get the car going again. And so the mechanic gives them the battery and all that stuff in exchange for 2 tickets, actually. So basically 2 of the characters don't get to go, 2 of the friends or whatever don't get to go to the Todd Rundgren concert. Anyway, Todd Rundgren's referenced, and you even hear the song "Hello, It's Me" in the episode, but Todd Rundgren never actually makes an appearance. Anyway, whatever. But in another episode, Alice Cooper, Donna, one of the characters, obviously, if you know anything about the show, she ends up working at a local radio station, and one of the first or one of the most, uh, like one of the episodes, basically Alice Cooper is featured, and um, he actually makes an appearance. Alice Cooper actually plays in the episode, and then there's also another episode where Donna is doing some interview with Ted Nugent or something behind, before the show or before his before his concert, and it actually is Ted Nugent. Of course, Ted Nugent shows up in the show, and then of course some of the characters are some of the characters are trying to bootleg Ted Nugent shirts to make money off at the concert. And one character accidentally spells his name wrong, and all the shirts say Tad Nugent instead of Ted Nugent. Anyway, that's basically where my reference comes from. The name, or my name comes from, the name Tad Nugent just comes from an episode of that '70s show, and it's when the characters are trying to bootleg Ted Nugent t-shirts at his concert, and one of the characters completely fucks up the name, and all the shirts say Tad Nugent. So, needless to say, they get busted for selling bootleg t-shirts, but eventually get let go because the shirts are spelled wrong anyway. It's technically not even a bootleg. But, so, that's not even a political reference. It's a comical reference to a TV show that guest starred Ted Nugent at one point. And people take it, they don't even, I guess they're being ironic, or I don't know what they're fucking being, but they're idiots. People are stupid. I explained it to them. I was like, it's not a political reference. I'm not a Ted Nugent fan in an aspect to his politics. I mean, I'm very anti-political in a lot of ways, and I obviously hate government, and people like Ted Nugent don't. They're very patriotic, they're jingoist, they're nationalist. I mean, they believe in government, and no matter what they say, there's some aspects I may agree with them. I mean, I love guns, and, Ted Nugent loves guns, but it's the name Tad does not, it's not a political reference to Ted Nugent. So it's funny how people get that crossed, and you explain it to them, they still don't get it. I almost said Carole King, but I think it's Janice Ian, I think. She posted, or someone shared a post of hers, and Janice Ian is, a one-hit wonder from the '70s, and she had some fans and all that stuff, but she's very politically far left. And I remember making a comment on a post that someone shared of hers, and I had a little back and forth banter with these, leftist nut jobs. I'm just kidding. Those leftist cocksuckers. These leftist, and then all of a sudden Janice Ian starts replying to my stuff. Well, of course, for all I know, it could just be someone running Janice Ian's page. I hope I got her name wrong, or I got her name right, but I don't know. At this point, I'm just, honored to have a one-hit wonder reply to my fucking stuff. But anyway, of course, like I said, it could just be a person running her page on Facebook, but whatever. So everybody was making a big deal about the Ted Nugent thing, but it's like I explained to everybody, it's reference to that '70s show. Do you watch TV? And I showed them a video clip of the episode and everything, and of course they still don't get it. They're that daft, I guess. I suppose they're willingly ignorant on that subject, and they want to make everything political and not understand things. But anyway, this is what happens when you can't sleep after working, even after working 12 hours. I slept for a few hours, and I guess I'm here making this video. But basically, it just comes down to, and I was going to discuss hate crime laws in the United States and the UK, because, I discuss politics or political issues and social issues with people. I mean, I try not to get too political or political with people. I mean, but I like to talk about deep things and things that actually affect people, rather than just talk about the weather or talk about, what your favorite, just small talk is kind of trivial. I mean, it's obviously why it's called small talk, because people don't really talk about anything when they talk small talk. I mean, But you talk politics or social issues or anything of import, people start getting squeamish and offended. But anyway, some people you end up discussing politics with anyway, or social politics or whatever you call it, social issues and all that stuff. And then I just recall one of my conversations with someone regarding hate crimes and hate crime laws and hate speech and free speech and all that good stuff. And this person was, they were telling me that basically in the UK, black people and white people get along just smashingly well because of the hate crime laws there. Is that it's very illegal to discriminate against people in the UK, and so there's hate crime laws in the UK, obviously. So people get along even when they don't get along, And I pointed out that people in the UK have racial issues too. There's white supremacists in the UK, and there's also a lot of racial rhetoric in the UK. There's also there's all sorts of different things going on in the UK that happen directly in the United States too that that correlate. I mean, the US and the UK are actually very similar, despite their striking differences. They're strikingly different in some aspects, but they're strikingly similar in a lot of aspects. And people like to play that. Oh well, in another country, these things are better because they have certain provisions that make it better. And that's what's funny is. I'm not a patriot. I'm not a nationalist, and I don't, USA. I'm not a jingoist. I don't believe in, my, America. I don't believe in that crap. I don't believe in nationalism. I don't believe in flags or governments or, national, giving a great Yelp review of America or whatever, or the country you happen to be born in, but whatever. So I'm not, defending America, and I'm not saying America is the greatest place on earth. I'm just saying I think people need to really step back and actually look at things and actually do research and actually come to real conclusions based on actual facts, not just, regurgitated opinions. Like, oh, the UK is better than America because, despite the fact that white people may not get along with certain black people, or black people may not get along with certain white people, that they get along they get along enough to get by without hurting each other or hating each other or saying mean things to each other. They're cordial enough to, breathe and exist in the same realm. But the fact is, it's not true. I mean, racial violence happens everywhere, even in the UK. And even if it's isolated incidents, it doesn't matter. Thing about the UK is that people in the UK are racist sometimes. Sometimes white people are just racist no matter their nationality. And sometimes even if you wanted to, you can't stamp out racism. You can't stamp out opinions. You can't stamp out rhetoric. I mean, really, because you have your own rhetoric. People have their own rhetoric. I detest your rhetoric. I detest your opinion, but you have your own opinion. You have your own view on things. So claiming that the UK has stamped out racism and stamped out hate crimes and bigotry, and because they have laws against it, is kind of preposterous. Because even in the UK, you have people that were considered leftist that would probably disagree with Donald Trump on most, if not all, things. But they actually agree with Donald Trump on immigration. Because a lot of the people from the UK who happen to be white agree with nationalism. They agree with, borders. And that's what's funny is these people are like Morrissey from the Smiths. He's very left-wing. He's... obviously, he's not a fan of Margaret Thatcher. If you say the name Margaret Thatcher in front of any of the guys from the Smiths, they would probably puke coat hangers. But anyway, I mean, they're not exactly champions of conservative politics and conservative views. So when you hear Morrissey talk about nationalism and talk about UK and how it's becoming too much of a melting pot for him, it's kind of ironic that he's a leftist in most aspects. that all of a sudden he, has a rightist opinion. He's a right-wing opinion about immigration and about, non-white, Muslims and, people from the Middle East and all this. And, because every now and then I check in and I see Morrissey's comments on things, or he posts something or he tweets something in like regards to the Ariana Grande or whatever the fuck her name is, that concert where that explosion happened and killed, these so-called terrorists killed like 20 or 22 people, at the concert. And of course Morrissey chimed in like he always does when he feels, because Morrissey's a pretty outspoken person anyway. I mean, most celebrities are anyway. I mean, well, some celebrities are outspoken, but Morrissey's outspoken, especially if anybody knows anything about Morrissey. He's very, vegan, and he hates, he won't even play at a concert that serves, a concert venue that serves meat. He refuses to play concerts where meat's served and all that stuff. So he's very, he's very passionate about his views. But he's, it's funny how he's very left wing most of the time, but he's very right wing about a very, hot spot, very hot, very hot issue, a hot button issue here, with immigration and all that stuff. And so it's funny that in the UK you have hate crime laws, and you have, laws against hate speech and all this stuff. And it still doesn't change people's opinions. It still doesn't change the way people feel about things. People are still racist, and people still are, they're still white nationalists. I'm not saying Morrissey's a white nationalist. I'm not saying he believes in a white nation and a whites only, environment, or a, whites only country, but, or, whites only state or nation. But he does have very right wing views on, a very typical right wing views on, immigration, and of course it pertains to non-white immigrants. Basically, people from the Middle East. Most people from the Middle East aren't white. Most Muslims aren't really white. So, add that up. But anyway, there is racism in the UK, and there's people who are, vocally racist, and people believe that there isn't racism in the UK because we stamped it out. We stamped it out in the UK because of hate crime laws, guys. You better step up your game, because the US doesn't have hate crime laws. And that was another thing that the person said. They claimed that the US doesn't have hate crime laws. And it's bullshit, because the US does have hate crime laws. They have crimes, or they have provisions, they have laws with provisions that provide extra punishment if a hate crime is if it's discovered, or if it's, when they analyze the nature of a crime, and if they believe it's a hate crime, they'll potentially add extra, punishment. They'll heap on the punishment. There's a extra incentive for punishment there. And so people believe for some reason that the U.S. doesn't have hate crime laws, and it's funny because they do. They really do. And, well, like I said, and like any other law, laws don't prevent crime, and they don't stop people from hating each other. They don't stop people from hurting each other. And, just like that, hate crime laws are rampant in America, rampant in the UK, but they don't work. And it's because they're just like any other laws. They're just, they're just statements written on paper saying that please don't do this, or don't do this, or you'll get this, or you'll receive this punishment. Well, the thing about people is they really don't understand that, stuff like that doesn't work. Obviously, people are going to have contempt for each other anyway, and they might hide it better, or they may not even care to hide it, and they may just say, well, I don't care about laws. I feel however I feel, and deal with it. Just deal with it. And then this person was going on about how we should censor the internet and basically, censor hate speech and all that stuff. And of course, if you talk to anybody who understands anything about the supposed, Constitution of the United States, is one of the provisions in there is the, basically, we have a right to free speech. Americans have a right to free speech. So, as Americans have right to free speech, people often clarify that hate speech is free speech. You have the right to call someone nasty names, and they have a right to call you nasty names right back, or have an opinion on it. Technically speaking, the provision of free speech is, the idea of free speech is you can say things, you can say controversial things, and that's the point. I mean, as long as you're not hurting people, like, what's the problem with having an opinion on something? But that's how people forget. That's how much people forget. And they love the Constitution. They love constitutional. I love the Constitution, but they don't exercise the Constitution. They don't exercise, the things that are said in the Constitution. But that all boils down to people's opinions on legislation and government documents and all that, or whatever. Again, people don't really realize this, that you can have your opinions, and you can have the ways you deal with things, and that's just how you are. And believing that people are going to stop being, that racists are going to stop being racist tomorrow or today just because there's hate crime laws, it doesn't alter the severity of their actions or their words. And that's what people need to realize, that you're ultimately responsible. You're ultimately responsible for yourself, and you're ultimately responsible for the way you view things, and the way the way you react, the way you analyze things. I mean, nobody's gonna sit there and sugarcoat things. We're talking about adulthood here. We're obviously adults. Most of us are adults, and obviously anybody on my page is an adult, because, I mean, obviously, unless they're posing as adults, they're secretly a 12-year-old kid pretending to be 30-year-olds. I don't know. It happens. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, you're an adult. You have to, eventually acquire some kind of problem-solving skill to deal with life. And if you can't deal with people's words, if you can't deal with the way people do things, well, that's probably why you're offended. That's probably why you can't get things right, because you're not attempting to solve things logically. You're attempting to solve things emotionally. Again, we're all emotional creatures. Humans are emotional. That's one of our fallacies, is that we're emotional. But one of the good things about humans is their ability to, use logic to solve problems in everyday life. And everybody has some kind of logic. It doesn't matter what it is. There's some logical point in all humans. We all have logic. It's just the fact is some people don't use it as much, or some people don't use it as much in certain situations. So there's always, there's always a variable there, which is basically just life. Life is just always a variable. There's always some kind of certainty to things. There's also variable things. But anyway, that's basically why I get upset with people, because you can't just speak to them. You can't just talk to them. And then suddenly you start feeling that you're talking down to them. And then they get mad because they think you're talking down to them. And sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're just trying to explain things to them. And you're not trying to tell them that they're wrong for being offended, or they're wrong for saying something and speaking out, and defending themselves against hate speech. But that all comes with the territory. Well, you can just, there's an escape. There's always an escape. You can escape other people's opinions. You can escape, the feelings that come about when people attack you, verbally, but people don't want to exercise that escape. It's usually, you can stop going on certain websites, or you can stop visiting certain pages, or maybe you can stop talking to certain people, or maybe you can, channel your, creative input and actually do things that take your mind off people's ignorance or people's hate. I don't really know what else to tell people, or what else to, expect from people. I don't know. You try to explain yourself and explain that, like I said, in the UK, everybody thinks everything's peachy keen in the UK, and it's so evil. People in America are living in the Middle Ages, the medieval times, and that's not true. But that's because that's the Europe fallacy. Everybody believes that everything in the Europe continent is so far advanced that we may never catch up. And the thing is, it's kind of arrogant to assume that Europe has all the answers to the world's questions. I hope I said that correctly, but So just like European socialism, just like socialism period, but even when Europe fails, when Europe does get something right, America never wants to follow. But it's always the things that Europe screws up, like taxes. You know, when European countries adopt higher tax rates, when they adopt stricter laws on businesses, like, oh, businesses should be forced not to throw out day-old food. They should be forced to donate it. Well, technically speaking, a lot of these places actually do donate the food, or would donate the food if they didn't fear penalties from the government. Fear. And of course, people don't listen. They just think, oh, well, the government is your friend. You just gotta. It's a tool. The government is a tool. You gotta utilize it in your favor. But the thing is, it's not always possible, and most of the time, it isn't possible at all. I mean, trying to utilize the government to help to further your cause is very trivial. It's very futile. It's not gonna work out in your favor 99 times out of 100. It's always gonna backfire. There's always blowback using the government for your ends. And so you try to tell people, well, when Europe gets something completely wrong, America jumps in the bandwagon and wants to do what Europe does. But when Portugal gets it right on the drug war, oh yeah, you know what? We ended the drug war, and we saved people from, self-destruction. And we did this because we treated drug addicts as people with problems rather than criminals. We treated them as patients. We treated them as patients rather than criminals. We legalized prostitution. We legalized, drugs. So eventually people they became self-aware. They started shaming themselves, and they started realizing that they had a problem, and they would eventually, get off of drugs and stop abusing drugs. And a lot of people got clean from their addiction. Got cleared from their addiction. They got help. They got help. They got clean. They went straight. And Portugal doesn't have as much of a drug problem as they did. They had a really bad drug problem, and the laws they had didn't work because laws don't work. The drug war failed. Even in Portugal, the drug war failed. So they took the laws away. They decriminalized. Sorry, not legalized. They decriminalized prostitution and drugs, which means they didn't prosecute them, and they also didn't tax them for doing drugs. Oh, let's have cocaine shops and charge people decent prices, but at the same time tax them because we need the tax for it. No, they didn't. That's not what happened. They just decriminalized drugs. So when that happened, eventually they saw a pattern. Less and less people were drug addicts. The drug addiction rate fell. But America doesn't get that right. When America wants to do something, they want to legalize it so they can tax it, so the government can tax it. That's all they want to do. They don't want to deregulate it. They don't want to decriminalize it. They want to legalize it to tax it. Tax revenue, that's all it's about. But anyway, in America, when they follow Europe, they always follow Europe down the wrong road. When Europe does get something right, when a European nation does get something right, like when, supposedly Switzerland is such a, free market capitalist society. They believe in free market capitalism, and they don't believe. There's certain taxes that they don't pay, and there's always something in Europe that kind of baffles people. But whatever. If you're foreign to something, you're foreign to something, no matter what. So like when a country doesn't tax its citizens as much, or when they alleviate taxes, when they take away most taxes. America doesn't do that. No, we can't do that. But when Europe fucks something up, America wants to follow. Oh, European socialism? I think that can work in America, because we'll just call it democratic socialism. And when the economy fails, when the fucking government tanks, we'll just blame capitalists for it. So that's a socialist mantra: blame capitalism for everything, even when capitalism doesn't have anything to do with it. So when these people, again, the fallacy with hate crimes and racism and hate speech and all this is that people think that it worked in Europe, it worked in the UK. It didn't work in the UK because people still have opinions. People still hate each other. People are still racist. People still have white nationalist fronts in Europe. I mean, they still have white nationalist groups in the UK. They still have rhetoric. They still have chants, and they still have groups, meetings and stuff at the local pub and everything, and they still hate black people. Some people just still hate black people. The laws aren't going to change people's racist views on things. And you can't force integration. You can't force segregation either. You can't. If people naturally mix together, they're just going to naturally mix together. Just like people are naturally going to be standoffish. You can't change people's views. You can't change people's patterns. When you do, you're hurting them like cattle, and they eventually just, you're killing the human spirit by forcing things upon them. You can't force integration. You can't force segregation. Okay, it's just two things that, they're polar opposites, but people always try to There's always some things that people, we gotta force this, we gotta force that, we gotta force this, and they don't realize that people segregate themselves, intentionally or unintentionally. And it's funny when people do that, and then people say, well, that's a choice they made. Well, isn't everything a choice that people should? I mean, aren't people? That's all people should be about. Is choices. They make choices. They don't make choices. Choosing not to choose is still choosing. I mean, but whatever. People. Again, this all goes back to what I was saying about government. Government does not stop people from doing what they want to do, and it doesn't stop people from doing what they need to do and what they feel like they need to do. So when people say the UK, well, hate crime laws work in the UK, they don't. They don't work in America. They don't work in Europe. They don't work in wherever other continent or other country they might be, implemented in. I mean, you can't get away from racism. All you can do is try to be a better person and respect people's their differences as much as you can, without compromising your own. But people don't see that, and that's where humans fail. Is they have the ability to see things, but they don't have the basically don't have the they have the ability to see things, but they really don't want to see things. I guess they really don't challenge themselves. They don't really challenge others to think differently. They don't. People exhaust each other, and they have the ability to change things without violence. They have the ability to change things without hurting others, and without forcing their own ideas. Everybody can have their own idea. It's just when you're forcing your ideas on people that make no sense. Just like when people want to force internet censorship. Okay, these are people who believe in freedom, or claim they believe in freedom, but they believe in internet censorship. Well, internet censorship's funny because sometimes the internet censors itself. I mean, no one's forcing YouTube to take down videos that violate, obscenities. Basically perpetrate obscenity. Like, oh, you're obscene, mister. We need a law for that. We need a law for YouTube to ban porn from their website. You can't post porn on YouTube because there's a law against it. No, you can't post porn on YouTube because YouTube won't allow it. If they think there's nudity that's in a sexual nature, like if you're not making a video of someone giving birth, you can't show someone naked. If it's not an artistic expression, you can't show nudity on YouTube. And it's not because YouTube is following laws. I mean, obviously, if YouTube was following laws, I think Pornhub would be banned. RedTube would be banned. Any website that doesn't censor itself would be banned. But they're not, because really, for the most part, the internet is not censored by law. The internet, for the most part, is self-censored. It censors itself for different reasons. Like Facebook censors itself. Facebook, you can't show nudity on Facebook. You can't show certain things on Facebook, and it's because Facebook is self-censored. The people who run Facebook, the people who maintain in whatever, Facebook. They censor posts. They censor things. They remove things, and they're not. A lot of times, they're not doing it out of the name of the law. They believe they're doing it out of the name of decency. So, censorship. Basically, the internet censors itself. So people who attempt to censor the internet through law and order are quite nonsensical. They're silly. People are just silly. I mean, you believe that things have to be. You have to force people. You have to force people to do things. You have to force people, right? I have to cut your hand off and make you do it because you're not going to do it. I have to force you to do it. That doesn't make any sense. And so, in a nutshell, that's basically what people aren't getting about things. Laws don't work. They never work. They will never work. And that's because people will do what they want to do and what they need to do. So, whenever I say something on the internet, I always get tarred and feathered because for some reason they believe I'm Ted Nugent, or referencing Ted Nugent in a political sense, or he's my hero. Ted Nugent's my hero. He's not. Okay, Ted Nugent's not my hero. He has a couple decent songs, and I like his views on guns. But give me a break. When someone explains themselves and you still don't understand, that's your fault. And I explained myself several times that Ted Nugent is not a reference politically to Ted Nugent. That's all I got.